Good gosh, there's gotta be a better way to do this.
A few disclaimers before getting into this spoiler review. I'm not the type of Zack Snyder fan that thinks James Gunn's Superman is whiny, weak, or that they made him woke. Superman literally was created as a champion of the oppressed, an ubermensch that fought against fascists created by Jewish writers in World War II. Like, any more woke than that and you end up with a character that just rejects sleep as a concept. Number 2, I am also not the type of Superman fan that particularly values surface level visual cues. Like, I'm not gonna lose sleep on whether the Daily Planet looks like a building or a golden ball, whether Superman has red trunks or not, and yada yada. So some things that might be a finally the thing to some, to me are more likely to be, yep, that is indeed the thing. With that out of the way, I honestly enjoy this film. I've seen someone describe it as like being catapulted on season 3 episode 7 of a TV show, and honestly yeah, that sums it up nicely. This DC world already got established Superman, metahumans, and even pocket dimensions. I think it's a great way to set itself apart from previous cinematic iterations where either Superman was the only hero, found out about other heroes, and both all started out as origin stories anyway. This isn't that and I appreciate it. There are still many nods to previous Superman media though, be it comic booky stuff like the Kingdom Come logo, the All-Star Superman robots, or Lex Luthor turning the masses against Superman with a Kryptonian message like in Superman Birthright. However, expect quite a lot of nostalgia from the Christopher Reeve films, which as you may or may not know, is not a trend I'm particularly fond of. At this point I think there's been more Christopher Reeve nostalgia than actual Christopher Reeve Superman content. But I also know that this is not a fanbase that reacts particularly well to Superman stories that rather move the character forwards instead of backwards. Ironic, given the Man of Tomorrow title, I know. This is a very lighthearted film, to the surprise of absolutely no one who's seen the trailers. And I don't wanna say this is a, quote, turn off your brain to enjoy it type of lighthearted, but if you like characters that constantly spell out their thoughts and motivations, leaving a 0% chance for even a toddler to even miss a single thing, or for adults to find any nuance whatsoever, this will be the movie for you. I am already sensing my passive-aggressive self slowly peering through, so let's start with the positives. This movie pretty casually introduces Superman having his high-tech Fortress of Solitude with robots and everything, which is really nice to see being done in a non-LEGO movie, you know, Clark having his own full Batcave of a source he can come back to at any time. I always like that aspect. It also made me think of that Injustice 1 stage, you know, with the zoo with all the alien species and everything. That is where I thought Clark wanted to bring the fire-breathing kaiju to. But apparently this universe already has intergalactic zoos, so there's that. Despite me loving Snyder's more grounded take, I also am quite fond of how openly comic booky this movie is, like, not in a stupid stuff happens, it's cool because it's not realistic, fuck you Nolan type of way, more so the combination of elements. Like, there is a scene where Lex Luthor keeps Superman hostage in a pocket universe with the help of Metamorpho creating kryptonite to keep Clark weakened while Lex delivers his best James Bond audition. All of this being resolved thanks to Metamorpho saving Clark by creating a miniature yellow sun element by element, on some Firestorm type of timing. Like, I deadass could see our comic book story opening up like this. I never thought we'd get to see this energy in a live action comic book movie. I gotta be honest, I kinda admired the film for that. And Metamorpho looked amazing, so that was nice too. Even outside nods to established comic book stuff, there's some creative visuals in the way Superman fights other flying characters, how they engineer shapeshifts, or Mr. Terrific's tech in general. Yeah, Guy Gardner doesn't really do much despite possessing the most creative weapon in the universe. I'm not expecting him to pull a Kyle Rayner levels of artistry, only Kyle Rayner himself can pull that off. Plus, I've always been more of a Jon Stewart type of guy myself. I don't really think Hal Jordan should be anywhere near School Zone. And Hawkgirl was really hot. No particular Hawk biases here. This movie features two fictional nations clearly meant to be Israel and Palestine, and given how they handle it, the movie is essentially anti-Israel and pro-Palestine, which by itself is very based, hashtag Free Palestine of course, but regarding my opinion on using a real-life ongoing genocide for your blockbuster superhero story, let's just say I can appreciate using a blockbuster as a means to spreading awareness about this, but I also fully understand if you feel iffy about this thing. Lord knows, I kinda do myself. There are parts of this Lex Luthor in this movie that carry potential for the best live action Lex. Like the scene of him nonchalantly walking in the middle of the fight scene between the fortress robots and the engineer, not bothering to dodge the saw blades and everything. Or just the pure evil scene of him playing Russian roulette with an helpless man in front of a kryptonite poisoned Superman just because they gave him food that one time, and all Clark can do is watch helplessly as he begs Lex not to shoot before he shoots anyway. Jesus! Like, that is pure evil Lex Luthor. That is the Lex I can imagine giving people superpowers only to watch them drop from the sky, or to cure then uncure his disabled sister just to show that he can. I still think Lex is the most wickedly heinous live action Luthor. If you prefer more sanitized pure evil Lex, this one should do the trick. I like how he uses a kaiju as a diversion to break into the fortress, taking advantage of Superman's heroism and inability to be everywhere at once, or how he tells the engineer to suffocate Clark from the inside when she fails him to arm him for the outside. There's bits and pieces of a very smart and great Luthor portrayal, but there's also one big glaring issue that stops me from particularly liking this version, as we'll get into later. Let's see, what else is there? Oh, I like the Kryptonians having their own language, rather than everyone universally speaking English. That's neat world building. Oh, and early on we get Lois and Clark having some, let's say, classic Daily Planet banter, making one wonder if we're recycling that dynamic all over again from the older movies. But then they get home and they're like, ooh, that was such a risky roleplay we did there, right in front of Jimmy too. And I was like, hold up, these two are horny. They're being horny on main. I love that. It's like the theatrics of the usual Clark and Lois dynamic mixed with the sincerity of the Snyderverse Clark and Lois dynamic. The film potentially has the best Kent farm we've ever seen in live action, like based on pure vibes alone. There's this one scene of Clark sitting outside the farm and all we hear is the animals in the background doing a quiet morning, and man, that was a vibe. Probably the most immersive part of the film for me, and it lasts a few seconds, mind. I like Kryptonite actually burning Superman's skin in this version, rather than just weakening him. Sure, it's a more extreme example of radiation poisoning, but hey, it is something different from what came before, and Lord knows this movie could only use more of that. On that topic, you know how often the Fortress of Solitude is made of crystals across various Superman adaptations, including this one? I recently saw a tweet that reminded me that this all started because Christopher Reeve's Superman did it. Except in that version, he was trying to create a small, miniature Krypton for himself, so every time the Fortress is given a crystalline form without the corresponding Krypton also sharing that aesthetic, it kinda just becomes a nostalgia reference for the sake of nostalgia reference. And sadly, I think that's a good way to describe the way James Gunn uses nostalgia in this film. It exists for itself. Like, we get a clumsy, Clark Kent persona for like 13 seconds, which was also an exaggerated artifact from the Reeve movies rather than from the comics, as I covered in this video. But we also later get told that Clark in this movie uses hypno glasses, which entirely nullifies the point of putting up a persona. It just comes off as trying to satisfy the people that thought that Henry Cavill was a bad Clark Kent just because he played the straightforward Clark from the comics instead of the goofy class from the Donner movies, yet he's still trying to force a Civil Age reference in there. On the topic of Zack Snyder's Superman movies, this film features many nods to those. Like, James Gunn himself is a big Man of Steel fan. He even turned the Eagle into an evil twin of Russell Crowe's Jor El. That part did not surprise me. The movie immediately starts with Superman crash landing in the snow, and we later get Clark surrendering himself to the authorities. Wonder what those scenes remind me of? And the inciting incident is Clark intervening in the middle of international conflict. So many hints, my god. Exactly like in Batman v Superman. Except in this movie, we don't really see it, like, at all. We're just told it's something that happened, boy did we ever. It's basically the same Superman plot from Batman v Superman, except every single plot point possible is spelled out as clear as possible so that even babies can't miss it. Instead of showing Superman saving a village from getting drone struck by the US or him flying to Mexico as soon as he sees a girl needing help on the news, showing how much his compassion for others doesn't stop when the US borders do, we get Clark shouting at Lois about how much of a good person he is, telling us how much he cares for others regardless of borders. I just don't think this was as effective as showing it. And I know how ironic this is gonna sound given the #1 narrative surrounding Snyder vs Superman, a version I am quite fond of, but the Superman in this movie is a bit of a Squidward. He's always annoyed or grumpy, at the receiving end of some kind of slapstick joke, and like, Snyder vs Clark got his ass handed to him plenty of times, don't get me wrong, but he also had that serene vibe around him, never really getting on the edge of things unless someone, I don't know, throws his girlfriend from a roof or something. But to me, James Gunn's Clark always felt on the edge for one reason or the other. I usually called Superman Clark across all iterations, we're close like that. He's also felt weirdly passive. Like, I associate Superman with the idea of sweeping in on the action to save the day, but whenever this Clark sees something he dislikes, it's more likely that he's just gonna stand there going, come on, gosh darn guys, what the hell are you doing, come on! Like when the Justice Gang murders the Kaiju or Crypto almost kills Lex Luthor at the end. Like, I personally prefer Clark to be more of a man of action, rather than just watching from the sidelines, you know, a bit more proactive. I genuinely have no idea what James Gunn was aiming for here. There's this one scene of an interdimensional imp, who's missing a fedora for some reason, attacking the city, but Clark is just too sad about Crypto to do anything, so he just ignores it. He says the Justice Gang got it handled, sure, but like, there's still people in danger that could use an extra hand. Like, what's the big risk here, Clark? That your presence might end up saving too many people? This is the exact same type of negligence Snyder vs Superman is routinely accused of. This Superman is fast and cartoony enough to actually do something about it, but it doesn't. Snyder vs Clark didn't ignore the bomb because it was sad. He didn't expect someone to pull this off, and he had nowhere near high enough levels of speed to pull a Quicksilver and rescue everyone at the same pace as an explosion. This Clark is just sad. At the most, it doesn't even destroy anything. It literally exists just to be a light show in the background, style over substance. My favorite bit of acting from David Corenswet was during the Pocket Universe segment, where Lex shoots the man and Clark just lets out a pained scream of pure anguish. That was some great acting for Corenswet. I heard sobbing and I thought, oh, this is where this guy is gonna shine, but that was actually Metamorpho crying, so that was a wasted opportunity. The one time I felt like David's deadpan performance works flawlessly is at the very end, where he's paired with the rebellious Supergirl and he just snarks to the robots about how much she goes to wet some planets just to get wasted. For a brief second, that is where he felt the most like the DCAU Superman to me. If he was consistently paired with Supergirl throughout this film, that attitude of his would make perfect sense, but he just wasn't, so the end result is someone who's just grumpy without anyone to balance it out. We also have seen how Lex tried to convince a boardroom of government people that Superman is dangerous, also straight from BVS, and fun fact, in the Italian version of this movie, Jimmy Olsen has the same voice actor as Eisenberg's Lex Luthor, which is funny since Zack Snyder did originally want Jesse to play Jimmy at first. That's neither here nor there. On the topic of Lex, his biggest weakness as a Lex Luthor adaptation is how much he needs to openly talk about how much he hates Superman, like constantly in every scene he's in. Like, I always like to see Lex as an embodiment of toxic masculinity, which would imply, you know, keeping all your anguish bottled up inside as a contrast to the tender masculinity Clark traditionally embodies. But instead, every single scene is like, wow Superman, I sure hate you because you're a stupid alien, I am jealous of you, and I am evil, and I will sure kill you. Then Clark is like, wow Lex, you sure obsessed with me because you sure are evil and you sure want to kill me. All that was missing was Lois Lane popping up like, yep, I sure love both Clark and Superman. I am a bossy tomboy that makes an actual "he's not my boyfriend" joke in 2025, which isn't really too far off from my portrayal. I still like it though. I may be shooting my gun too early here, but this is my biggest criticism of the movie. I've seen many describe it as feeling like an episode of Superman the Animated Series or even Justice League, and as someone who grew up with those shows and was introduced to Superman thanks to these shows, like, no, like not at all. I think it's a disservice to the work of Paul Dini and Bill's team to say this movie felt like anything from the DCAU, I'm sorry. I think this impression came from how cartoony everyone and everything in this film are. If a villain is meant to be evil, they will be as exaggeratedly evil as possible. If a female character is meant to be hot, you will see her cleavage constantly bounce whenever she's on screen. If a character is meant to be cool-headed, you will see him be inhumanly calm regardless of the chaos going on around. If the film wants to convey crowds changing their mind, they will change their mind on a dime. All at once, at the same time. Like, talk show hosts will be up and ready seconds after something is revealed. People will dramatically throw away the Superman ads if they think he now sucks. We'll have interviews ready on the fly about how awesome he is if they suddenly like him. Gunn is the nuanced portrayal of BVS where different people all over the world have different perception of Superman. If the movie wants to have Superman save people from a monster, then their intelligence will suddenly drop to the negative digits so that they're dumb enough to not run away from the monster, forcing Superman to save them. Like, to me that's not Clark organically saving people in need because of his compassion, but because the reality of this film bends backwards to create these moments, by erasing any sense of preservation for these people. Like, sure, they're used to metahumans for centuries now, but I still think they really shouldn't need to be told by Green Lantern that a giant monster poses a giant threat to the whole being alive thing. I have zero problems with Superman hugging children after the fight was done, but when Clark stops to ask people if they're okay while the monster in the background does nothing but roar at the sky, I don't see that as Clark going the extra mile to be kind or thoughtful. I see that as the writers holding the action back so that the people in the audience can go, "Oh, isn't it nice?" It doesn't feel sincere. It grinds the action to a halt to fulfill a checklist. Like, you can write as many angry comments you want about, "Oh, you hate Superman for being comic book or cartoony, you just want gritty realism for a guy shooting lasers," and like, no guys, no. You do know that the inherently fantastical nature of Superman as an alien doesn't have to translate into an obligation for every aspect of this movie to be as mindless as possible, right? Like, if I wanted to read a comic or watch a cartoon, I would read a comic or watch a cartoon. But when I get seated for a live action film, I am here to see what the director wants to tell me, in his own vision. Like, it's just deeply immersion breaking for a live action movie to act like it's a cartoon. You're completely free to enjoy this approach, but I gotta ask, why search for this in a live action movie? Why not just watch a cartoon? You get the exact same experience in the medium it belongs to, and if you're talking the DC animated universe specifically, probably with vastly superior writing too. The DCU also had a Superman that was beat around a lot, so the idea of a weaker Superman was never a turn off for me. The problem comes without a movie wants to have its cake and eat it too. I just struggle to believe that this specific Superman went undefeated for 3 years, when he literally spends most of the movie coughing on all fours. There's this one scene where his super breath is so potent that he can escape the gravitational pull of a fucking black hole. That's cool as hell! I'm a power scaler, but I have no idea how to quantify that. Is it the speed of his lungs? Does he make the air inside his lungs travel faster than the speed of light? Either way, that was awesome. But then you're telling me that a robot created by Lex Luthor is what punched them all the way from Metropolis to Antarctica? Like, I feel like the movie can't quite make up his mind about how powerful this Clark is or not. At a certain point I was wondering if the whole 3 years thingy was shoved in solely to fit with the whole 333 years 3 minutes text introduction at the beginning of the film. There are armored soldiers sent by Lex Luthor trying to kill him at the end, and he's like, "Yeah, good luck with that," and I'm like, my brother, where does this confidence come from? You knocked on death's door so many times in this film that you might as well just ring the doorbell. And I'm pretty sure they didn't mean it in the same irony as someone called Invincible getting his ass kicked every episode. They really wanted to fabricate aura with that line, but it's very unearned. How do I introduce the next point in a non-awkward fashion? I don't like the way James Gunn portrays women in this film. Lois is fine, like she gets a bit annoying towards Clark in a slightly awkward scene that gave me major "why are my parents fighting instead of having a divorce" vibes. Then again, I grew up only with my mom, so I'm probably not the best judge for that feeling, but otherwise she's a perfectly okay Lois. I still prefer Amy Adams and Bitsy Turok. Cat Grant is just boobs, and like not inaccurate per se, and I sure ain't complaining about that part alone, but if the choice was between omitting her or having her character existing only to be fapping material for 12-year-olds, I could've gone without her, honestly. Then we get to Lex's girlfriend, Eve, who he abuses a lot, he throws stuff at her, calls her an idiot, pulls her by the ankles, puts her in a state of fear due to constant surveillance, and she just treated like an annoying chatterbox by both Jimmy Olsen and the movie itself. That's fucking messed up. Why would you portray a victim of domestic abuse like the butt of a joke? Again, refer to the DCAU if you want to see a victim of domestic abuse being portrayed with the seriousness it deserves. Ditto goes for Jimmy Olsen magically attracting every single woman that puts eyes on him. Like, yes, it is accurate to his long list of love interest in the comics, and I am certain that all 17 Jimmy Olsen stans got really happy about this tweet being acknowledged. But when it comes at the cost of creating female characters that have as much depth as the singing ladies that existed only to be horny for Gaston, maybe don't. Like, my point about Clark and Lois from earlier should tell you that I have zero problems with female characters being horny. It's just that Lois is the only one in this film who's also portrayed as a person on top of being horny or a punching bag, you know? There's also a scene where one of Luthor's exes escapes the pocket universe and suddenly her parents are conveniently on the same street, giving us a supposedly heartfelt reunion. I know the movie wanted me to go, aww, but I'm also like the movie often indulges into manufactured wholesomeness that doesn't come off as sincere, just super immersion breaking. But since I'm criticizing an objectively cute moment, I pretty much signed my death warrant because now James Gunn cultists will claim that I am against abuse victims uniting with their loved ones, probably spamming their monkeys gif over and over. Thank you, James Gunn, for creating a scene that people can use to compare others to chattering monkeys in his day and age where racism is an all-time high. Very cool. I kinda like how Jonathan and Martha Kent are just no-name farmers, you know, really grounds Clark, but like, they really exist as parents more than they exist as people. They're just here to be cute and say cute things. I know that Snyderverse Park Kent whispering the wrong word angered people for 12 years straight, so I don't expect Superman directors to ever portray Kents as actual people again for another dozen years, unfortunately. They were still okay though. I feel towards them the same way I felt for Lois. They worked for what they were. Sorry though, I just didn't feel a thing about this saga. I think more time at the farm would have only helped this movie. You can't expect me to care just because the film takes it for granted that I will, you know? And instead of being a clone from Earth 3, which will work perfectly fine in this world created by James Gunn, Ultraman here is a Superman clone covered in black gear from head to toe, before being unmasked at the end of the story, making him essentially a comic accurate black noir from the boys, for some reason. Early on we're told that Clark tortured a human being with a cactus, again told and not shown, which sucks here because the human being is the in-universe stand-in for Netanyahu, so that's a wasted opportunity. I would've liked to see that. The final battle doesn't really work for me for a few reasons. Number one, while Lex Luthor kickstarting a black hole that might destroy the planet just to get Superman's attention is as Luthor as it gets, the speed without this black hole tears the ground in half wildly fluctuates depending on what's more dramatic for the scene, which took me out of the film because it's again, the filmmakers slowing things down so that cute scenes can happen. Number 2, while everyone is rightfully running away in panic from that black hole, Lois, Jimmy and Perry, who's black in this situation, again Snyderverse nod, nice, are just having a normal and chill meeting about what Mrs. Lane found on Lex, and like, I guess how uncharacteristically chill they are is supposed to be the joke, maybe they're just so used to this, but again, I just get taken out of the film because if the characters aren't taking this seriously, why should I, you know? Also, the old Daily Planet cast subplot, I don't personally see what I added to the film, like, people hated on Snyder for keeping it limited to Clark, Lois and Perry, but those were all plot relevant characters. The last thing I wanna say is that a movie should only have what's needed for the plot, you know, because that's how you get stuff like The Last Airbender. But besides quirky characters that just occasionally quirk their way into having screen time, I don't see how this is better. Again, it just feels like something existing for the sake of itself. Before this movie came out, I remember joking on Twitter about how James Gunn will omit Superman's laser vision entirely, since laser eyes became so synonymous with evil Superman and the mean version of Zack Snyder's Superman, and James Gunn wants to do the awesomeness incarnate level Superman, and they almost don't even use it at all, because Superman uses lasers only once in this entire movie, and it's against a group of armored humans, to whom he spams those lasers around with no control or care, yet when those goons fall down, they just have small laser slicers on their armor. This highly reminded me of how the Batman did violence, like the superhero was recklessly violent, but the reality around them bends in a way that protects them from any lethal consequences, or Arkham Batman tearing people apart only for the reader to classify them as unconscious. Despite Zack Snyder being accused of being the overly violent style of a substance superhero director, I personally think it's worse to showcase superheroes being violent without the corresponding consequence of their actions being taken seriously. You kinda whitewashing violence, you know? Like, love it or hate it, but at least Snyder portrayed violence in a sincere fashion that wasn't just there to mindlessly entertain and keep your mind at ease because we showed the goons groaning on the ground to show that we're still alive or something. Violence means something in Snyder's movies. Returning to that show don't tell tidbit, Lois at one point says that Clark, quote, sees beauty in everything and everyone, which is true for pretty much every iteration of the character, but whereas other iterations show that, this Clark honestly tries to convince Ultraman and the engineer to switch sides only once, that one time fails, and is perfectly okay throwing the former in the black hole and meteor landing the latter afterwards. He just kills them. Then there's the aforementioned non-existent effort where it came to rescuing the Kaiju from the Justice League gang or Lex Luthor from Krypton. The Kingdom Come logo made me think this was gonna be a movie where Superman tries to teach superheroes not to kill, to show them the right way, but apparently it was just a logo used for aesthetics because Hawkgirl kills Netanyahu, based, in a way clearly portrayed to be the correct and cathartic one, but somehow we're told this is not what Superman should do, meaning that apparently Superman should not do the right thing, and I'm pretty sure it would have just watched Hawkgirl doing that while going, gosh darn Kendra, really? Anyway, so I don't lose my sleep over Superman killing, just, you know, don't have him kill random humans in a mall or something, just do it as a last resort, like in Man of Steel. But this unfortunately makes the Kingdom Come logo just another nostalgic nod that exists for the sake of itself. And sounding like Peter, my god. The complete lack of empathy towards Ultraman is particularly funny in this film, because I seem to remember Kryptonians in the comics being racist towards clones, and I highly doubt that was the intended effect here, but given how Jor and Lara already are in this universe, who knows what else this got for them, you know? Yeah, let's address that actually. So, Lex Luthor uses Superman's DNA to access the fortress, get his hands on the last message left by Kryptonian parents, and translates a previously corrupted second half. How believable it is for me to think that the human linguistic aspects to decipher a language from galaxies away may fall into the suspension of disbelief that comes with comic book stuff, even though I've been doing this for pretty much this entire film, to the point where I'm not even sure if turn off your brain to enjoy it slop label is that far off at this point, but I digress. The second half of this message has Jor and Lara basically claiming that Kal-El was sent to Earth to, quote, dominate the planet and form his own harem of hybrids to spread his father's seed. Now, it's not the first Superman iteration trying to pull the oh Jor-El wasn't so clean thingy, which I'm pretty sure was an internal reference to how Telltale Batman tried to do something similar with Thomas Wayne, and while both plot twists intend to shake the core beliefs of the world's finest, I just am not the biggest fan of Clark being given such an easy reason to reject his heritage. The film essentially creates a scenario where Clark is perfectly justified to reject the ideals of his own country, portrayed as barbaric compared to the good old American upbringing, basically the wet dream of any modern day Republican. Quite the decision to make. Lex tells Netanyahu that it wasn't a fake message. Mr. Terrific reiterates that the translation team never gets these things wrong, but like, I am not sure if it would be better for James Gunn to stick to this creative decision or fix it in a sequel, like say that this was Zod in disguise all along or something. It's rough, man, it's rough either way. I don't see a scenario where this turns out well. Especially when the Superman speech at the end, personal opinions on the delivery aside, It's literally just David Corenswet spelling out word for word the supposed message of this movie, shouting in a way that James Gunn-led performances often do to trick you into thinking it's an Oscar-worthy performance. And basically an extended I am one of the good ones, you know, as he spends the whole movie condemning his parents and proving he's worthy to be assimilated into his new home. The final nail on the coffin being the recording Superman sees to relax, switching from Jor El Lara to Jonathan Martha, which I get why he would stop watching the former, but replacing it with flashbacks of a childhood we've never seen before just feels more like a more manufactured wholesomeness. I just am not fond of how much this film does that or the cartoonish way people work in this presented story. It further validates storytelling where audiences aren't asked to do anything but listen and retweet supposedly feel-good quotes from this film. I wasn't expecting an Oscar-worthy, deeply nuanced masterpiece about the complexities of Superman, but I wouldn't have minded a movie that asks something more from me besides 2 hours of my time. Here's the thing, as far as the Superman brand is concerned, I don't think this movie is a flamethrower wielding psycho ready to burn it all down. More so, it's more akin to a kid with a box of matches wandering into an extremely flammable area and no one pulls him out of there because it's just a kid having fun in the open. Lighten up, dude. James Gunn created what I do wanna call a well-intentioned film. But amidst those well-intentioned lies a fuel that I think can only be ignited by the worst people possible. The way Gunn spoke of Superman pre-release already gave me major centrist vibes, something I don't think Superman as a character fits in the slightest. He was conceived as a left-leaning champion of the oppressed who fought against the rich, not an enforcer of vague kindness where everyone just needs to get along, gosh darn it, it's punk rock American to be kind, dude. Basically a Superman that represents something without representing anything. The person turns into a symbol. The symbol turns into a brand. The brand is now hollow, and the S now stands for supremely fucking empty. Interesting conversation could be made about how responsible James Gunn will be for that or not. Maybe don't claim that disliking this movie means disliking America as a whole, that Superman isn't well known, or even worse, don't appeal to the anti-woke crowd any more than your movie already did. Dumbass. But I've also read that this movie surpassed Man of Steel's domestic box office record, and I'm just not sure how much of a good news that is for current American audiences to reward a movie where a refugee rejects his heritage in favor of some good old American family over one where he actively seeks to find out more about his people, the complications that topic carry, and the US military portrayed as reckless at worst if not negligent at best. More propaganda for the masses. Will that be a bad thing? Only tomorrow will tell. In the meantime, drink lots of water, I'll do the same. Orko Quirton, hoping a major day, slightly more super.